Good day and welcome to today's demo, where we'll be showcasing how we implement test data automation projects where we have workflow between several subsystems. In our demo organization today, we are wanting to replicate an online ordering transaction where we have three systems involved. Our first would be the customer management system, which hosts our customer and card details as well as the orders. We have our inventory management system, which hosts the product master as well as the stock levels. And we have an invoicing system which hosts the invoicing as well as the remittance advice. From a workflow perspective, what we'll be seeing is how we use GenRocket to create the projects to populate the product master as well as the initial stock levels. In the customer management system, we'll be creating the customer records, assigning their card details, and placing that all-important order. Once that order is placed in the invoicing subsystem, we are wanting to create an invoice and then go through and perform the remittance. Based on whether or not that invoice was settled or declined, we'll then go through and see how we update our orders table within the customer management system. Within GenRocket, we have a concept of one application per project. So here we are going to be seeing how we use the GenRocket components to set up for the inventory system, the customer system, as well as the invoicing system, as well as see how we use those initial domains to update our order records. In this demonstration, we are handling integration. So here we're going to make heavy use of the GMAP server. The GMAPs doing this, we'll be creating key value pairs. These will be stored in map memory. And by way of example, when we are generating for the customer table and the order table, these will be put into memory. And when generating for invoicing or indeed updating the customer order, we'll be retrieving these from the GMAP server. Without further ado, let's jump into the demo. I am now in the GenRocket web application where all of the modeling and design magic happens. Let's see how we set up for our inventory project. So firstly, we require domains. There are 14 mechanisms within GenRocket to complete this. In this example, I used import from XTS. In order for us to create the extract table schema or XTS file, I'd run a couple of commands, and once that is completed, I'll then go about importing this file, and this file contains the metadata as well as relationships between the tables. Once that is completed, and it takes a couple of seconds, I'm ready to start modeling out my test data projects. So let's have a look at the product master table. When I am in the domain dashboard on the left-hand side, we can see a list of the attributes as well as the generators which have been assigned. In some instances, I may want to go and do some generating tuning, and that is what I've done here. When looking at our product type, I'm wanting to create a percentage of different types of values when generating this data. And to do this, I've used a multi-weight generator. Now I have completed that with the rest of our attributes. Once our generator tuning is complete, next thing to do would be to assign our loop count, so how many rows of data I'm wanting, as well as validate the relationship based on that XTS import. Here we can see that product stock is a child of product master, which is 100% correct. Next thing to do would be to decide where I want this generated data to be populated to. And here I have assigned the generic SQL insert v2 receiver, which will insert this directly into my MySQL table. Important attributes, which I've added in the parameters, include my properties file. Now, the property file is stored locally on my machine, and during generation, this is read in order for us to access the impacted database. Last thing to do would be to go through and create a scenario. A scenario informs the GenRocket runtime, which is installed locally in your environment, what and how much data is to be generated. In this case, we have 300 product masters and one product stock for each one of those masters. Now, we'd be ready to go through and execute this, but before jumping into the execution, I'm going to run through our other systems. Let's take a look at customer. Once again, I've created the domains using the import from XTS, and let's see how we went about modeling out our customer, which is going to be creating the initial customer records. So first things first, in terms of our customer ID, I wanted to ensure that this would always be a unique record. And to complete that, once again, using my properties file, I will be connecting through to the customer database, and I've performed a count in terms of the maximum number of rows, where I'll be incrementing that by 1 for each customer record. Here, this is one of our important attributes which need to be stored in the GMAP server. So I have used the GMAP key value gen as a link generator, where in terms of my key reference, it will indeed be that customer ID, and the value will once again be the customer ID. And I have continued with this approach in subsequent attributes which I'm wanting to store in memory. Here, generating a first name and then storing that in memory based on the customer ID. Now, I completed that for the card domain as well. And one area of interest that I'd like to show you is in terms of orders. So while placing an order, we would become quite upset if that item wasn't in stock. So to replicate this, I have a query which I'm applying through to our inventory database, whereby I'm saying, please give me back any one of these orders where the stock quantity is not equal to 0. Once again, of course, storing that into memory. Now, in terms of the attribute tuning, I am complete. However, I have added an additional receiver here, and this time being our GMAP put receiver. So in terms of this receiver, I'll be defining a namespace, which is customer, as well as the configuration. Now, the configuration includes the REST endpoint where the GMAP server is running. Alrighty, now we've got our customer table set up. Let's wrap up with the money components and what we do with that data which is stored. So I'm now in the invoicing project. Again, I have created these domains using import from XTS, and I am looking at the invoicing domain or table. So in this example, what I'm wanting to do is I am wanting to go through and retrieve the data which is stored in our GMAP server. Here I'm using one of our GMAP get gens based on the namespace which we set as customer, as well as the record which was saved, in this case item code, and based on our key reference, which is our customer ID, I'll now be retrieving that information. Now, I also completed that with our remittance table. And in remittance, there's one interesting item, and that is in terms of the status. So in this case, I didn't want everything to be settled. I wanted some of these to be declined. Here, I've used a multi-weight gen to create that. And once again, I am storing that in memory so that we can use it with our customer.orders table. Before generating the data, let's see what we did with the orders table. So once again, I'm going to go through to customers, but in this case, I've used the GenRocket self-service platform, and I have navigated through to G cases or test data cases. In this case, I've created a test data suite. I've assigned a category in terms of what type of testing I'll be performing, and I have created a new G case. In this example, I'm only wanting the orders table to be impacted, and let's see what changes I have made. So here we can see our dark blue highlighted attributes. These are the only areas which will change based on our pre-modeled item. And once again, I'm using our GMAP getGen based on our namespace as well as the customer ID. We'll be retrieving back the orders, and in order status, based on the detail which was stored during the invoicing process. If that is settled, I want the value to be processed, else I want that to be recorded as pending. Alrighty, last thing that I've changed in terms of this domain is adding a new receiver. So in this case, I'm wanting to go through and update SQL, I'm not wanting to go through and insert. So I have once again pointed through to my properties files. In my attribute properties key, I've defined which one of the attributes will be variables, and I have created the syntax to go through and update our customer.order where we have a specific generated value and with the order ID. Alrighty, now provided that I have GenRocket Runtime installed, I have downloaded all of my artifacts, we are now in a position to go through and execute these. So hang tight and we'll jump into the execution in 2 seconds. I am now in MySQL, and the first thing I want to do before executing is just confirm through to the group that all of these tables are indeed empty, and we can see that they are. Right, let's go and generate some data. So the first thing is I'm going to go through and open up a terminal. And there we have it. And we're going to kick off with populating our inventory table. So I'm going to use the genrocket-r for run, and I'm going to look for my populate product scenario chain. In this case, I'm having to use PowerShell. CMD is giving me a bit of an issue, but let's execute and run that. So the first thing which is going to happen is that the GenRocket runtime is going to spin up. There will be a license validation check, which is happening, and the data will be inserted into the table. Let's quickly go through and populate those customers. So here I am using the new customer order scenario chain. I'm going to be executing that. Again, the engine is spinning up and we are busy inserting those 100 orders into the customer table. And let's wrap up with our invoicing. So there is our invoicing scenario chain. And a couple of seconds and that will be completed. Alrighty, all completed. Let's go and see what our base data looks like. So first things first, let's go through and have a look at the data which was generated into our inventory system. So I'm going to quickly hit off those commands. There we can see we have got our product master and we have got our product stock levels. Let's go and have a look at our Mr. Customers. We'll execute that. And there we go. We have got 100 customers. Each of those customers have got their card details added, of course, with referential integrity. And we have one order per customer. Now, as we can see, we have gone through and performed that query based on the query that we included within the GenRocket web application. And please see that our order status in this column is all placed. Now, for our next item, let's go and check out our invoicing column. So here we go. We have got 100 invoices with 100 remittance advice. Of course, we are still retaining referential integrity back through to our customers and what they ordered. Now let's have a quick look at our remittance. So here we can see that based on that multi-weight gen, we have certain values which are settled and certain values which were declined. Now, the last thing that we wanted to do was go through and update that orders table to go through and reflect that. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to jump back to our orders table and I'm going to go and execute that G case that we created. I'm just grabbing the command, moving back to PowerShell, entering that in and kicking that off. And our expectation is that in real time, while we are reviewing this, this will be updated. So let's go and see what we are getting. And there we go. We can see that our order status for certain records has been updated from processed in terms of where we have payments back to pending. So in terms of our demonstration for today, that concludes our demo. Let's quickly wrap up with a summary. So during today's demo, we have seen how we went about creating projects, how using XTS, we have created the domains and the attributes. We've had a look at generating tuning specifically in terms of queries, and then using the GMAP key values as well as getgen. We've had a look at how we morph that data into a usable format, assigning our receivers. In our case, in terms of generic V2 insert receivers, as well as the GMAP putgen. And we have executed and validated that integration across multiple systems. Thank you very much for your time today, and I hope to speak to you soon.